here and who's online. Commissioner Brennheiser, Commissioner DeBunda, Commissioner Egloff, Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Lark,
Online here.
Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Ruddy, Commissioner Sweeney. We have 100% attendance.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our commissioners, to stakeholders, and public members here. Thank you. Since we have quite a few online and in the room, I mean, I'll do my best to try to manage both screen and room, but it may be a challenge. I'll look for a signal from those in the room. Just raise your hand, please. And the same on the screen. I think if you can use the raise hand feature that sometimes that's difficult in a larger group, but I'll try to be attentive to that. This meeting has been properly sunshined. The meeting was properly advertised in accordance with the Sunshine Act. As I noted, by way of notice, the Commission conducted an executive session this morning to engage in quasi-judicial deliberation to adjudicate at the public, to be adjudicated at the public meeting and engage in attorney-client privilege communication. So let's begin. Please note for the benefit of our court reporter that you spell your name, please. And when you come to the table to speak. And again, for those online, sometimes it's difficult to know who is speaking. So if you identify yourself, please, that would be very helpful as well. To the purpose, it has one, it's a special meeting, there's one purpose. It is to consider the Pennsylvania's participation in the Federal Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act that was signed into law December 27, 2020, to address ostensibly problems threatening the national horse racing industry under the existing state-by-state regulatory scheme. Under the Act, the Horse Racing Integrity Safety Authority was created as a private, independent, self-regulatory, non-profit corporation with oversight by the Federal Trade Commission. I share that as background. I mean, this is a conversation where we have decisions to make, and you'll see three such decisions on the agenda today to consider. But there are, as you can appreciate, budgetary issues here, there are governance concerns, and there are operational issues. And all of that has been being managed and addressed by our very capable staff. We've been engaged in this conversation for some time, but we are now arriving at a decision. Right? This is effective Monday, the 27th of March. So we are arriving at a decision by this commission about what to do. And what to do specifically is in respect to the three decisions that we have, and they are specific to safety, the intergovernmental cooperative agreement, and laboratory services. I'll turn to Tom Chukas for background introduction, as well as Tony Salerno, our directors of both the Standardbred and Thoroughbred Commission. And then we can talk about that issue. There are several, we understand, who will want to make a presentation. I would just ask you to limit that presentation and comments to 5 minutes. We'll then try to work through. We don't know at this point how many will comment, but we want to be sensitive to time. We understand the issues, but just be clear when you speak what you're presenting and what you're expecting of this commission to do. That will be helpful to us in the final decision. But we will leave today with decisions on all three of these components that are embedded in, required by HISA, and again have an effective date of next month. So we'll make that decision by the end of today's commission meeting. So with that, again, welcome. Thank you for being here. And we will turn to Tom for a presentation, and then we can pick up with discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman has set the table for this, and what I'll try to do is make some brief opening remarks and then try to walk through the three agreements. This process has gone on for probably 18 months. The commission has directed the staff to attempt to work cooperatively in some fashion with HISA and HIWU. The commission believes it's in the best interest of all racing in Pennsylvania, the horsemen, the tracks, and the breeders, and the commission to work cooperatively. It keeps us in the game and trying to address personnel concerns. To say this process has been fluid is probably an understatement. I think that the staff, to the best of our ability, has tried to address what the commission has asked us to. One clear point, though, is this. The federal legislation preempts the commission when it comes to the racetrack safety program. You'll hear us call the IGA, but that's the anti-doping and medication program, and the lab. At those levels, HISA, who is the designee by the government, and HIWU are calling the balls and strikes on that. And I'll get for thoroughbred only. So for the three programs, you have the racetrack safety program, you have the anti-doping and medication program, and you have the lab services agreement. One final direction from the commission was for the staff to do their absolute best to either eliminate, mitigate the costs that are coming down from HISA and the assessments, and to ensure that HISA isn't getting double payment, I'll call it that, triple payment, whatever you'd like, and to ensure whatever credits that we get offset the actual costs. And I'm just going to pop up here because sometimes it's easier for me. The Pennsylvania assessment for 9 months in 2023 is a little over $6 million. Okay, Parks is $3,499,000. I think Penn's is $1,491,000, and Presque Isle is $1,066,000. That's the assessments from HISA based on their assessment of the cost. It's HISA's assessment. It is not the commission's. So the commission is addressing the contracts and the agreements today. And a couple things to keep in mind for the commission and the group here. If the commission does not undertake the racetrack safety program, the intergovernmental agreement, and the lab services agreement, all those, the latter two, the intergovernmental agreement and the lab services agreement, the goal is to direct funds that are currently being paid out of the Racehorse Development Trust Fund and the testing program to address those costs. If the commission does not do that, that $6 million drops to the racetracks and to the horsemen's groups. Okay? So that's a concern that the commission has that the chairman addressed as a budgetary concern. The second is, if the commission does nothing and leaves it up to HISA and HIWU, let's just say there's a serious question come Monday at Parks if HISA and HIWU will have the staff in place to allow Parks to race. And remember, one of the goals here is the best interest of racing. So when we look at this, so we're clear, the commission has some options. The commission can accept the agreements, they can reject the agreements, they can direct the staff to further negotiate. Those are basically the tenets of where the commission's looking. Just for clarification for the group here today, whatever action the commission takes today, if they agree to decide to enter in an agreement on these contracts, it still has to go to the OGC and the AG's office. And as you clearly know, the wheels of signature don't work in 6 days, so probably we will have to come up with some kind of interim agreement to bridge that gap till it's done. At this point, George, before I get into the actual agreements, do you have anything you'd like to add, Tony? So let's start with the easiest and the simplest, and that is the racetrack safety program. If you remember back in July we entered into a letter of agreement with HISA to basically have our stewards, commission stewards and commission vets, do what HISA wanted. And we thought that, A, it was a good plan. We were doing 95% of what they asked us to do. There wasn't a huge leap. Based on a review of the last 6 months, while not perfect, it's worked pretty well. So in conversation with HISA and HIWU, basically that letter has been taken, the dates have been changed, and retroactive to January 1st for 2023. It ends at the end of 2023, but we'll continue to do what we did the last 6 months. And no, the commission on this matter in the racetrack safety program is continuing to pay the commission, pay the stewards and the vets as an employee coming out of the parimutuel taxes and the license fees. So that's been how it's been done the last number of years. So pending commission approval, that agreement is in place to continue as the last 6 months, the racetrack safety program. And understand, like all 3 of these potential agreements, they all expire at 12/31. They are all 9 months agreements, that's it. And just as a sidebar, that allows the commission and the industry to take a look at what happens over the next 9 months and see if there are changes that they want to make, or if there's any federal legislation, litigation that comes to play, or any future legislation. You're locked in if you sign these agreements for 9 months. George, anything on this subject?
Today.
All right.
Just trying to figure out whether we have a question. Commissioner Lark, was that a question? No? Okay.
Nah. So the next contract that we're going to take a look at, or agreement, is the IGA, or the anti-doping medication out of competition testing and so on. And so everybody understands, the IGA agreement, or the anti-doping medication, addresses the test farm operations, personnel, supplies, shipping, out of competition testing. Okay? Once again, that agreement will expire in 9 months, 12/31. Just going back to the board real quick. The key here is, if this is the assessment, we're looking for a test farm credit, an out of competition credit, and lab credit. Try to bring that number down as far as we can. Okay? And these are all projections. When I get done with these 2 contracts, I'll give you where I think we are, but there's got to be some finalization here. So, and as far as the components in this, and the one other key with any of the credits, much to HISA's chagrin, we negotiate what I would call a reconciliation. So, for example, if we receive a credit for the test farm, which ideally should offset exactly what comes out of the Resource Development Trust Fund to pay for it. We get a credit back so it's not being double paid. At the end of the year, staff here will take all the expenses in the test farm, total them up, compare it to the credit. Hopefully it's exactly what the credit we're looking for is. But basically, there's a $200,000 buffer zone that if anything up to $200,000 more than the credit, they'll refigure it for the next year and we'll cover it that way. So it protects both sides. And you'll see when we talk about the lab agreement, the same philosophy is in place while the numbers still have to be drilled down. I think this commission believes that it is in the best interest of the commission and the horsemen, the tracks and the breeders, that there's some kind of reconciliation at the end of the year, so everything's up front and neither side comes out on the short end of the stick. All right. A couple non-financial things regarding the IGA and the ADM statement. first off, so it's clear, HIWU elects and selects whatever horses are tested. Okay? So that means they have the ability on a race day to decide if all winners are tested, some of the winners are tested, are there specials, are there no specials, what horses are claimed or not. Now, the stewards can obviously make a recommendation, but that's got to run through HIWU to determine if it's going to be done or not done. In addition to that, HISA will direct investigations. HISA will look to designate areas for investigation, but we can supplement it and offer suggestions, but in fact, it is their call. Now, the way the ADMC is, it retains our staff. So in other words, when you go into the test barn, the livestock workers that are there, the vets and the investigators that are currently employed by the Pennsylvania Racing Commission still remain our employee. They're basically implementing HISA's policies, procedures, and regulations. In what we negotiated in with this, and I won't deny this has been a struggle with a lot of this, it's been a lot of pulling and prodding, is that the Bureau Director acts basically as the liaison for all this, with the test barn and the investigations. The Bureau Director is taking care of scheduling the investigations and so on for his staff, and acting as an intermediary with HISA. At the end of this, basically, that's the high points in a nutshell. But once again, I'm going to reinforce that HISA, HIWU, is basically calling the shots, and that's based on the federal legislation. It's not something necessarily I think the staff or the commission would want, but the federal legislation is what the federal legislation is. So the next area that this commission is looking at addressing is the lab services agreement. As you're well aware, that deals with forensics, the testing, the research, the rental of the facility, equipment costs, and so on. It is an agreement between the commission and HISA and HIWU, okay? The University of Pennsylvania has a role to play, but it's basically, we're working with them to see what they can and they can't do. Okay? I think it's important for the group to understand how this works. Currently, right now, the samples in the test barn are sent to Petrol along with the information and the numbers and so on. No horse not name, no trainer, no anything. Under HISA and HIWU, what will happen is this: the samples will still go to Petrol, but the information will go first to HIWU. HIWU will then send the information to Petrol. Petrol will analyze the samples and respond no longer to the Bureau Director, but to HIWU. HIWU will then disseminate the information back to us. So basically in this, we'll find out what the findings are, what the positives are, what the negatives are, but it all goes through HIWU. So let's just give you an idea where I think we are. These three numbers come approximately $4.8 million, which hopefully at the end of the day leaves $1.2 million for the racetrack safety program and whatever else is charged to the racetracks. And just so everybody knows, this number here is the number that the tracks and the horsemen got assessed in July. So we've done our best with that. There's some open issues that we're working currently on with HISA and HIWU when it comes to some of the sampling, the B samples, the testing, the clearance samples, how that works, who pays for that. Basically, at the end of the day, we're trying to maintain control because UPenn is our vendor, Petrol is our vendor. So we're trying our best to maintain control. obviously the key for the tracks, the horsemen and the breeders is the cost of bonus. That's one of the key components. And I think that it's fair to say that over the last couple of years, the commission has made major strides with integrity, plans to put in for equine health and safety and welfare. And I think this commission believes keeping in that position is advantageous both from a financial and an operational perspective. So that's been some of the guiding light with this. George, at this point, Tony, at this point, do you want to add anything?
I think we hit the highlights. I think it's important to know that we've been at this now going on at least 18 months trying to negotiate, and without divulging details, we're not the only ones. I mean, obviously, all the other states are engaged in discussions with HISA and IWU, and they are making their best efforts. The bottom line is, from this commission's perspective, as we were charged to do, was to really to benefit the industry, make sure that we protected the industry, make sure that we did everything possible to keep racing alive and successful as it has been in the thoroughbred industry in Pennsylvania, especially dealing with our employees who are union-covered employees. I think those are those kind of things that, as you directed us to do this, I think bringing it down to that level is substantial. It is very much substantial, and I think that's a testament to Tom's negotiating skills as well. And I think as we play this out, the key component I think is that it's only for 9 months. Trust me, not that we want to continue to negotiate every single year and do this, but I think it gives the opportunity for this commission to analyze what is working and what is not working. But make no mistake about it, the preemption language of the federal act stops us from reviewing, overseeing, controlling thoroughbred racing in Pennsylvania. Unless that changes by either some other statutory congressional act or some litigation that changes that, we are bound by it. So, other than that, I think those are the only comments I would have to add.
Yeah, the only thing I might add is that through the months of meetings and negotiations and all the pushback back and forth from us and HISA, whether we may, even though we may not all like the deal, we think it's the best. We've got it to a point now where we think it's the best we can get. And even though this won't affect the standard breds right away, we all realize that eventually the standard breds will probably be involved in this down the road. So, but, you know, it's been a lot of hard work on everybody's part. And even though I know a lot of people in this room don't like it, I think this is the best place we've got it to the best place we can get it.
Just before I kick it back to the chairman, I just want to reiterate something. The $6 million is an assessment from HISA. This 1.2 is not finalized. That's where I think we are, but as anybody that has negotiated this, it needs to be finalized. I think we're in that ballpark, but I just want to make sure that when you leave the room, it's not a done deal until there's 1 or 2 components of this left to figure it out. So that being said, at that point, Mr. Chairman, I'm back to you.
Okay, before we go to public and stakeholders, let's ask for clarifying questions, comments here, commission members. Commissioner Devanda? Your own view.
Right.
Okay.
Tom, you referred to the blackboard and the whiteboard and things. Those of us who are online cannot see that. You may want to repeat what's on there so that people who are on the phone know what numbers are sitting there. You referred to the 1.2, but you may want to go into that detail so that the people who are online see what those numbers are. Thank you.
Okay, what's on the board is this. HISA made an assessment for 9 months for the balance in 2023 for a little over $6 million. $6,057,000 is the number that they've assessed. That assessment breaks down to approximately $3,499,000 for parks, $1,491,000 for Penn, and $1,066,000 for Prescott. And what we stipulated is that if the commission does nothing, those assessments will fall to the racetrack and the horsemen, okay? So when we negotiated this at the direction of the commission, the goal was, as I said, to eliminate or mitigate the costs that come out of the track, the horseman's pocket, in addition to what's in the Racehorse Development Trust Fund and the testing program, and ensure that the costs are accurate and true. There's no double, triple dipping and so on, and to ensure the costs are commiserative. If it's $1 credit, it's $1 cost. So where we are today between, obviously, there is no credit with the racetrack safety program because that program is being paid by the commission out of the parimutuel taxes. So the issue is the ADMC or the intergovernmental and the lab services. So in the goal, I believe where we are, it's got to be finalized. So I'm going to say this again. Initial was $6 million. We believe the credits should be approximately 4.8, which leaves approximately 1.2. Now, I'm not going to lie, that could shift by a couple dollars, not significantly, but that's been the goal. So on the board, you have $6 million with hopefully credits of 4.8. That 4.8 will come out of the testing program just like it is now. So, Commissioner DeBunda, does that help answer your question?
It does, but I actually knew the answer. I just wanted to make sure that everybody else that got that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the commission? Or Tom, Tony, council? Okay. So again, just to reiterate, we have a few folks who have expressed interest in addressing the commission on this points. We will ask you to please limit comment to 5 minutes. We're not expecting to get into an exchange between commission and presenter on points, but simply to hear different perspectives and thoughts that you have relative to the 3 decisions that the commission is going to make today. And I know it's been stated, I think it's probably worth just reminding us all that we find ourselves here by no act of our action. This is a congressional action, a federal action, right? And now you have other parties, newly created and structured parties working with federal agencies to include the Federal Trade Commission that are standing in judgment now of what Pennsylvania racing is doing or will do. It takes a fair amount of patience to express this, but just because I think all of us have been at this for some years. Pennsylvania has a long and steep history in racing. It's 50 years plus, wherever you want to begin to count it. So there's a lot of history, there's a lot of experience, there's been a lot of work done over time by many people to put Pennsylvania racing where it is. And we certainly want to, as a commission and as a Commonwealth, protect the integrity of Pennsylvania racing. That is what's most important. As we have worked our way through these negotiations, it's also clear that to make decisions that we are required to make has human implications. Right? There are employees who have been working for us, with us, for a long time. We are not going to jeopardize their future, if any particularly possible. So you will see inside of these negotiations things that we've had to do to get to a point where we have structure and definition that lives true to what HISA is requiring of states to do. doing that inside of a framework where we have a commission here and others around the country. We're interfacing with new bodies, new governance structures that, quite honestly, it's not completely clear where those lines of demarcation are, but there is a preemption, right? At the same time, we only have half of our commission and equine industry affected by this, right? The thoroughbreds, standardbreds aren't. So we've got this quandary of commission and jurisdiction with the other significant part of Pennsylvania racing. And how do we manage that? Again, inside a new framework, inside new arrangements for how information will flow from tracks, from horsemen, from any number of entities through a lab, back into Highwood, HISA, back out, to ultimately make a decision. And then there are unknowns about how long that will take and when you have, if you have, some dispute, how long will it take to find resolution, right? But we've really tried, and I want to credit Tony and Tom particularly, for driving up the transparency, getting this conversation started about credit. That is not where we started the conversation, right? So now be at a point where at least you have transparency on a number, you have transparency on what the credit is, or roughly what the credit would be. It's not exact, but you have a credit. And you have employees in the current arrangement that are protected in the structure. And you have a research component which has been a significant piece of the commission's work that is in furtherance of the science and trying to understand impact of both implications for racing, implications for the equine athlete and others. That piece is there, and we need to protect that, but it's also shared in part by way of this arrangement, right? So there's a lot inside of this is what I'm conveying, is that we really are at a point where it is now Christmas Eve, right? You're days away. This is going to happen unless there's some injunction, but at least at this point it is the 27th of March. We want to put the Commission in Pennsylvania Racing in the very, very best position. I believe to do that, the three agreements that Tom has shared today around both the program, the safety program, the intergovernmental cooperative agreement, and the laboratory services agreement, we believe will satisfy the initial need that we have to respond as a commission and as a state. We view this as, it's 9 months, as Tom noted, right? So this is not a permanent agreement. This will be renegotiated. So we have some opportunity to reevaluate or reassess the functionality of these agreements if need be. And we have a continued need to negotiate on the particulars of credit and how that would work. Parallel to this, we feel that we're not interrupting racing. Right? That continues. But we have the agreements that allow that to happen. At the same time, don't foreclose the work to get a structure, a system that's going to work for Pennsylvania racing. So I'll leave it at that for the moment. Let's we have three, at least to our knowledge, right? One on the screen and two here, I think. Jeff Maddie. Yeah, please, if you don't mind, come to the table here, just hit the speaker button, and if you would spell your name, please, for the report.
It's Jeff Matty, M-A-T-T-Y, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. Chairman Ruddy, Commissioners, on behalf of myself, PTHA President Robert Hutt, PTHA Vice President Kate DeMasi, our PTHA Board of Directors, and our association membership, we thank the Commission for their time and efforts pertaining to HISA and the challenges of implementation. We also thank the Commission for allowing us to convey our beliefs and viewpoints. The PTHA agrees and aligns with the PA, HBPA, Todd Mosseller on our genuine concern for the uncertainties surrounding HISA. With the current and unresolved lawsuits, as well as the concern for being granted the proper equitable credits. While our associations do differ in some respects, it's clear that both of the associations have the common ground and common good to continue the work of the horsemen in Pennsylvania. We understand, acknowledge, and support the Commission's decision at hand. In opting in and establishing a collaborative agreement with HISA, the Commission will not be putting a burden of $6 million on the desk of the horsemen and operators. During these times of uncertainty, I think we all have our unique opinions of HISA and what it stands for and represents. However, HISA will be the law of the land from March 27th. As members, proud members of the national THA, the BTHA has taken a hands-on approach with HISA, ensuring our horsemen are best prepared for this implementation. The BTHA feels that it is in our best interest for all agreements to be in place with the Commission and HISA, where credits toward the assessment will be fair and equitable for all. Again, we cannot thank you enough for your time over the last 18+ months. We know this was uncharted territory and uncharted waters, but we do trust your judgment and directional foresight. Thank you for your time.
So thank you. Melissa?
Thank you, Commissioners. From an HBPA representative standpoint, Todd, G-O-D-D, Mostoller, M-O-S, T-O-L-L-E-R. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Horsemen's Benevolent Protected Association. As the Pennsylvania HBPA affiliate of the National HBPA, we've been involved in a number of legal proceedings prior to this meeting. We've done our best to make sure we're educated in this manner. We have legitimate concerns on a number of issues, and I'm not here to say we support or don't support HISA. Our real concerns are the outstanding legal issues. And if this commission were to move forward without those being resolved, what problems are created? As of now, we sit 6 days away from implementation, and the FTC has not approved the rules as submitted by HISA. It's very difficult as a horseman to sit here and potentially watch a commission approve something that's not even approved on the federal level. We have strong concerns regarding that. The other concerns we have deal mainly with the legal, the word I'm looking for, we started the process of legal challenges, we did that once. And I'm very thankful for Tom for his accounting and giving us an understanding there. But our concern, as we've already applied to enjoin in the injunctive lawsuit that would enjoin us with West Virginia, Louisiana, and I believe the third state was Mississippi. And I'm fearful, or we're fearful as the Pennsylvania HBPA, that if these credits are transferred to HISA and we are then enjoined, which could happen tomorrow, it could happen 4 weeks from now, we don't control the process of the courts. But if HISA does not apply because of injunctive relief, and that money has already been allocated to HISA, what do we do at Presque Isle and Penn National, and where does that money come from to pay for that testing? Obviously, we've made a large contribution out of the Racehorse Development Fund as those two respective horsemen groups at Presque Isle and Penn National. So those dollars get allocated to HISA, we're enjoined, it doesn't apply to us. How do we move forward? Furthermore, we firmly believe that this is ultimately going to be decided by the Supreme Court. Is that 2 years? Is that 3 years? I don't think anybody can give me an answer on it. Our fear is that if, in fact, it goes to the Supreme Court, we can't see a situation where ultimately this commission is not potentially better of its employees and other individuals that handle racing matters. And if the Supreme Court would find this to be unconstitutional down the road, how do we repair that damage? And how do we get all those individuals back that allow us to run with the commission as the regulatory body? They're very strong concerns. The third thing I didn't intend to talk about, but it was kind of funny this morning, we actually had HISA and HIWU representatives at Penn National to educate our horsemen should this go through. And Ben Mossier was there, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And my horsemen were going to get an hour of their continuing education credits if they signed up and they had their HISA registration number on the enrollment form. So I asked Ben, how do I get that form? I said, I'll just sign on to my HISA account. It should be right there. Interestingly enough, I tried to sign into my account. It told me I was a non-responsible person. I currently own 17 horses in 5 different jurisdictions and race all over the country, and yet I still have an internet platform that tells me I'm not registered, or I'm an unregistered person. I think it speaks volumes as to this is not ready for implementation yet. They continue to move forward when it's not ready, and it's a strong concern that these problems are going to create chaos as we move forward. I thank you for your time. Entertain any questions?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Brian, are you? It's a maybe. When do you want to say? Okay, then we'll go to Russell Williams.
My name is Brian Sanfratello, BRIAN I'm the Executive Secretary of the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. I wanted to just make it clear that we are behind the both horsemen's groups in that we want to make sure that the allocation is fair and equitable to all. I will tell you that our organization is in support of HISA. And I just have a couple of questions from the presentation because as a breeder, we really have not been open to some of these numbers before. Tom, you had said that it's 6.057 million. That's everything altogether, safety, everything? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I was under the impression, you had said that the commission will pay for the safety. Is that correct?
Basically, if you go back to July of last year, the commission made a decision to opt out on the assessment, but they also had a decision to make whether they would implement HISA's rules, meaning the whip rule and assorted others. We said yes, so our stewards, our vets and so on implemented their rules. In the event that we didn't, my understanding from conversations with the racetracks and HISA, those costs that would have been incurred for an additional steward, an additional vet or vets, would have been in addition to the money that was assessed to them, okay? So currently, as we have in the past, we continue to implement the program, our people doing their normal jobs, plus assuming the duties of HISA under the implementation. And that payment, that funding comes out of the parimutuel taxes, license fees and so on.
Thank you. And the last question I have is the 10 million is already being transferred from the Racehorse Development Trust Fund. Is that still going to be transferred at 10 million?
By statute, it is required that, I think the number's 10,066 is transferred, Brian. And that will continue to be transferred. And that's where the funding comes to pay the test barn, just like we're doing right now.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Russell Williams. On the screen, there you are. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Russell, R-U-S-S-E-L-L, Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S. I'm president of Hanover Shoe Farms, a major Pennsylvania standardbred breeder. President of the United States Trotting Association, which has in the neighborhood of 3,000 members in Pennsylvania. And both of those organizations are plaintiffs in the HISA litigation, which I did not come to speak about. I think people are more or less familiar with what's going on there. There is another matter I wanted to update you on, but in the description of the Commission's intentions, what it's trying to bring about in today's decision, I think, is to looked at from the point of view of the industry, I would say, is to act as collection agent for HISA. As you say, if the Commission doesn't enter into these agreements, then the assessment drops to the stakeholders. And at that point, it's HISA's problem to secure its funding. That is a laudable intention, and I certainly see the benefits, the positive side of it, but there is a negative side, because by doing this, you prevent HISA from being accountable for its assessment. The assessment comes from on high, and then the Commission scrambles around trying to make sure that it doesn't disrupt the Pennsylvania racing industry. But HISA has never been held to account for the assessment itself. So I know you're aware that that decision has two sides, and while you're weighing those sides, there is legislation about to be introduced in Congress. Now, I know better than to make specific predictions. However, the primary sponsor of this legislation has been talking with us. We provided him with a draft. The draft came from the National Racetrack Veterinarians, from the HPPA, from the USTA, and it's already been through legislative services. So Leg Services has put it in congressional format, and as soon as the primary sponsor has his team put together, the bill will be introduced. This bill is a state-administered program. So the states would form an interstate compact. They would use state authority, state experience, state funding, and save millions of dollars over the HISA structure. The legislation is health and safety focused. It provides all of the same benefits to the racing industry that HISA does. It is science-based, and this is one of the problems we've had historically with the approach of HISA. It's in the HISA statute. The arbitrary nature of the regulatory approach is in the words of the statute, the LASIK's ban. The new legislation will be science-based, and so you've got state administration, science basis for making policy decisions, and a funding model that can be afforded by the racing industry. So it's not just a possibility out there, it should be happening in the near future. And I would just ask you to take that into account, as well as the litigation, when you assess the uncertainty that lies behind making any sudden moves at this point. Thank you.
Okay, Russell, thank you. Last call. Matt, Joe, please, just use the.
Thank you. Joe Wilson, WILSON. I just want to thank the Commission, Tom, Tony, George, all the staff. I know you've been doing a lot of work. A lot of us have been making a lot of phone calls. I appreciate what Russell's saying. I appreciate what Todd's saying. You know, legislation, lawsuits, everything else. We raced in 6 days. If you don't do this, we don't race in 6 days. Am I wrong about that? No. So, you know, whether you like HISA, you don't like HISA, it doesn't matter. None of us asked for it. It's here. This is the reality. We need to deal with it, and we need to keep racing. I care about racing in Pennsylvania, mostly parks. So that's my concern. We race in 6 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Todd?
Why are,
help me understand why you don't raise.
I think it's fair to say this, Don. I think there's two issues here. I think dropping the $6 million to the tracks and the horsemen is problematic. I think that's one. And there has to be a deal cut, and I'm not quite sure where anybody is in this. And secondly, based on our understanding from HISA and Highwood, I'm not sure they can staff these places.
So because the legislative body that is potentially going to be in place over oversight horse racing in this country, because they haven't dotted their I's or crossed their T's and don't have their people in place to move forward on the 27th, Parks potentially doesn't race. Does that not raise a red flag to anybody?
Look, I think, Todd, it's fair to say we all have our concerns. I mean, are you suggesting, and I guess I would ask you this question, are you suggesting the commission should be inconsiderate of the $6 million price tag dropped to the horsemen and to the racetracks and say, well, it's not our problem? Is that what you're telling me? Or you're telling us, this commission, that if HISA isn't there on Monday to get racing going and so on, it's just unfortunate for the tracks and the horsemen? I mean,
Now, my question is, if we have in place and we raced last week, and if this commission does not take any action on HISA, laissez faire, basically says let's allow the legal problems to solve before the commission takes action, how is this week any different than last week? At this point, the FTC has not approved anything. So basically, there's nothing there. And we're making an assumption that HISA, the HISA doesn't have the employees to conduct what they rushed into to oversee racing. I'm just concerned that Parks would not be able to race under that scenario because of HISA's shortcomings at this point, and they're looking to take over everything. It's ironic, that's all.
Yeah, I was say, I think part of this is a confidence question. If they were negotiating in good faith, there was a level of transparency to us, the states and the respective parties that have been in this business for years. If that conversation dialogue was there, we would have a higher comfort level with, okay, let's see what happens. We are not prepared to take the risk in 6 days, given the track record of the last year and a half. So what you see before the commission today are 3 agreements that at least bridge from where we are to where we want to be, right? And they have been negotiated by staff with HISA and Highwood. So I look at it as really an insurance policy to continue racing. If they sort this out, if the courts sort this out, fine, but we're not going to wait for them to decide. We're going to protect Pennsylvania's interest. Okay? So with that, I know we've heard presenters and have before you the 3 decisions points. Do you want to break for executive session? What's your pleasure as a commission?
I move we move to executive session.
Okay, we have a motion and then a second for executive session. All those in favor say aye. Okay.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Lark? Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Lark?
Commissioner Jones on the line.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lark? We may have lost him. Yeah. Okay, let's reconvene the Racing Commission meeting. We did go into executive session as a commission to discuss what we heard relative to the 3 actions today. We took into consideration what we heard from public and stakeholders, and thank you for that. So we are now reconvened. With that, as we noted at the outset of the commission meeting, there were 3 actions that were necessary. We'll begin with the motion to address the HISA racetrack safety program. We have been briefed on that. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Sorry. Commissioner Ellis, thank you. Commissioner Ellis on the motion. And how about a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Reddy on the second. Discussion of the motion. On this motion, again, this is for the racetrack safety program, which will carry us through the end of calendar year 23. Okay. Any discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. On the motion to approve the HISA HIWU intergovernmental cooperative agreement, we have a motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Ellis on the motion. A second, please.
Second.
Sorry, is that Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Thank you. Second, Mr. Jones. Discussion of this motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Brennheiser, being that this is not going to affect standardbreds at this time, so I see it that we have an opportunity to see how well this program's going. I have a little non-confidence that they're ready to take over. For that reason, I vote no.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have all those in favor we've asked for. We have a no. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So, sorry, Dr. Grayloff? One abstention. Okay, Dr. Grayloff. Is it Jones? I can't tell. Identify yourself, please. Who's abstaining?
Grayloff.
Yeah, Dr. Grayloff. Okay, Dr. Grayloff, thank you. Okay, we got it. It's hard to tell on the voices here, so thanks for your patience. Okay, so that's the motion on the intergovernmental. The last one is the motion to laboratory services, the HISA HIWU laboratory services agreement. So we have a motion to approve the agreement.
Mr. Chairman, given HISA's anticipated anti-doping and medication control program effective date of March 27, 2023, I move that we direct the Bureau Director and staff to finalize the laboratory services agreement between HISA HIWU and the Commission and Petrol to be ratified at the public meeting, excuse me, on March 28, 2023.
Thank you.
Second.
Commissioner, thank you. We got a motion. Commissioner Rogers on the motion, Commissioner Ellis on the second. Discussion of this motion. Seeing none and hearing none, all those in favor of approving the laboratory services agreement motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, the same sign. Commissioner Brennheiser is a no on the motion. Do we have any abstentions?
Yes, I will abstain as a former Penn employee.
Okay, and one abstention with Commissioner Sweeney. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, there are the 3 action items of today where we started the meeting. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate the input as our discussions and actions and hope demonstrate that this is an active conversation between HISA, HIWU, and the Commission staff. We've been directed to continue those negotiations with laboratory services to keep you posted. But please know that we appreciate the support from each of you being here today. And let's hope that we can navigate our way through this. But the actions today put us, I think, in a very good place to continue the business in Pennsylvania. Thank you. Sorry.